chosen one. This moment was set aside for you before today existed, before the day had a name, before the hours were arranged, before the circumstances of this specific morning or afternoon or evening were in place. I set this moment aside. I reserved it. I marked it as the moment when you and I would be here together, and I would say what I am about to say. That is not a poetic statement. I do not speak in poetry when I am being literal. I am being literal right now. This moment, the one you are in as you receive these words, was prepared before you knew you would be in it. The path that brought you here, the scroll that stopped, the decision to stay and listen, all of it was part of an arrangement I made long before this day arrived. I want you to understand what that means about where you are. You are not here accidentally. You are not here because of an algorithm or a random feed or a sequence of coincidences that happened to line up. You are here because I made sure you would be. Because I had something specific to say and I needed you specifically to hear it. And the moment I needed for that conversation is this one. I want to go deeper into the nature of this moment being set aside, because I want you to feel the weight of what that means, not just understand it intellectually. A moment that is set aside is a moment that is protected. It is a moment I reserved in the flow of time and said, this one belongs to something specific. It cannot be displaced. It cannot be filled with something else. It was held across all the days and all the movement of everything in your life, held specifically for this exchange. How many moments in a life are simply swept along in the current of whatever happens next? Most of them. The days run into each other, and what was significant in one becomes background for the next, and the texture of ordinary time is the texture of movement without the sense that the specific moment was prepared. I am telling you that this moment is not that. This moment has a different character. It has the character of preparation and intention and specific placement. I held this moment for you, and now you are in it. I want to start by speaking to how you have been feeling about timing, because I know there is something underneath the surface of your days right now that relates to timing. The sense that things are delayed, that what was supposed to be here by now is not yet here, that the waiting has stretched longer than it seemed like it should, and the natural response to that is the quiet question of whether the timing will ever actually align, whether what was promised will actually arrive. I want to address that directly. The timing question is one of the most common places where my children lose their footing, not because the promises are false, but because my timing and the timing of human expectation are calibrated differently. And when the two do not match, when what I have said is coming has not yet arrived by the deadline the human mind set for it, the doubt that enters is not usually loud, it is quiet, and it settles into the background of the days and changes the quality of everything it touches. I see that doubt in you if it is there. I am not naming it to expose it. I am naming it to address it, because the word I have for you today has everything to do with timing. And what I am about to show you is that the timing you have been questioning was never random. Comment I received this word in the comments if you feel this message reaching the place I made it to reach. I also want to speak to what the doubt about timing costs when it is allowed to settle in unaddressed, because the cost is real, and I want to name it so you can recognize it in your own experience. When the timing doubt settles in, what it does primarily is compress the present. It takes the current moment and narrows it. The thing that is right in front of you, the good that is available now, the connection that is possible today, all of it becomes slightly less accessible. The weight of the question about what should be here and is not creates a kind of fog over the present. I am lifting that fog right now, not by giving you a date or a timeline or a specific answer to when, but by changing the framing entirely. The question was never when. The question was always what is being prepared, and the answer to that question is you. The preparation has been the forming of you into the version that can carry what comes next, and when you see it that way, the fog lifts, because the present is not a waiting room. It is the final room of preparation, and the room is almost complete. But first, I want to stay with the formation. The specific moment I set aside before today, this moment, is part of that preparation in a way I want you to understand fully. The moment was set aside because what I am giving you in it requires a specific version of you to receive it, not any version. The version that has been formed by the exact sequence of days you have lived up to now, including the days that felt like waiting, including the seasons that felt like delay. The you that is here right now, shaped by everything you have walked through, is the version that can receive what I have prepared. An earlier version could not have held it the same way. I call this the appointed threshold, and I want you to hold that name. The appointed threshold is where you are standing right now. This moment was not stumbled into. It was appointed before the day had a name. The arriving was planned. Remember it. This was always planned. You are not random. The moment is real. This is not consolation. I am not explaining the waiting away with comfortable language. I am telling you what was actually happening during the waiting. There was formation taking place, the kind that does not happen in seasons of easy progress, the kind that only comes through sustained trust when the visible evidence for that trust is limited. I was forming something in you that I need in the season that is coming, and the formation required the exact sequence of days you have been through. Let me speak to that formation more precisely, because I want this to be clear and not vague. What forms in a person during a prolonged season of waiting and trusting without visible evidence is a particular quality of rootedness. The roots of a tree do not grow deep during seasons of abundant rain. They grow deep during seasons of limited water, when the tree must push its roots further down to find what it needs. The depth of the root determines what the tree can sustain when weight is placed on it. I have been growing roots in you. That is what the season you have been in was doing. Driving the roots of your trust and your identity and your calling deeper into ground that does not shift. And the reason I need those roots to be deep is because what comes in the next season requires them. What I am bringing requires a version of you that is anchored at a depth that ordinary seasons do not produce. And the extraordinary season you have been in was producing exactly that depth. I want to speak to the identity that the hard season builds, because this is one of the things I need you to carry into the next chapter. The identity built in a hard season is a different identity than the one built in an easy one. Not better in some abstract sense. Different in a specific and crucial sense. It is an identity that knows itself apart from circumstances, that has been tested at the level where identity either holds or shifts, and that has held. You know yourself differently now than you did before the season. The version of you that entered the waiting did not know what the version that is completing it knows. Not information, identity. The knowledge of what you are made of that only comes from being in conditions that would reveal if you were made of less, and you were not. You held, the roots went down, the character formed. And that formation is now part of who you are in a way that the next season will demonstrate, both to you and to the people whose lives intersect with yours. This is the word for the moment I set aside, not a word of consolation for what has been hard, a word of revelation about what the hard has been producing. You are not behind. You are not delayed. You are not in a waiting room that has no exit. You are in the final stages of a preparation that I have been orchestrating from the beginning of your life, and the moment I set aside before today is the moment where I tell you that the preparation is nearly complete. My child, before I move further, I need to speak to the doubt that may be sitting quietly in the back of your heart. I know what it says. You are thinking that this specific moment, set aside specifically for you, is the kind of thing said to everyone who watches a message like this. That the idea of being chosen for a specific moment is a comforting narrative that applies generally rather than a particular truth about you. My child, I am not offended by that thought. That thought is the natural self-protection of a person who has heard language like this before, without the experience matching the language. I am going to speak to it directly. I did not set this moment aside in the way that a stage production sets aside a general slot. I set it aside in the way that I arrange specific outcomes for specific people. The path you took today, the precise sequence of scrolling and pausing and staying, that was guided, not as a metaphor. As a literal navigation of your attention toward this specific exchange at this specific time, the specificity is real. You are not one of a crowd receiving a mass message. You are the person I arranged this for. I know the difference. I am the one who knows it from the inside. I want to stay with this a moment longer before I move into what is next, because the framing I am giving you matters. The difference between believing that delay is random and understanding that it is purposeful preparation changes how you carry everything that came before. It changes the weight of it. What was heavy because it seemed like waiting with no direction becomes, in the light of this word, something that has been directed the entire time, just not directed toward a destination you could see from inside it. That reframe is not a trick of perspective. It is a true description of what was happening. I was directing. I was present. I was not absent in the seasons that felt longest. I was most active precisely in the seasons that felt most still. That is often how I work. The visible activity and the invisible activity are not proportional. Some of the most significant work I do in a life is done in seasons that look from the outside like nothing is happening. And that is the season you have been in. And now the season is turning. The roots are deep enough. The formation is at the stage where the next chapter can begin to unfold. The moment I set aside before today is the pivot point between what has been and what is coming. That is why I am here. That is why I had this for you now. I want to speak to the version of you that will walk into the next season, because I have been seeing that version throughout the preparation, even when you could not see it. I have been building toward a specific expression of who you are, a version that carries the depth of the roots without the weight of the waiting, that has the formation without the constriction that the hard season brought with it. The next version of you is lighter than the current version, not because the substance is less, because the weight that was part of the formation process has served its purpose and will not need to remain. The trees that have developed deep roots do not continue to struggle to push them deeper once the roots are established. The work becomes easier, the weight becomes lift, and what you have been building through the sustained effort of the hard season becomes the foundation that the easier movement of the new season stands on. That is where you are going. I set this moment aside so I could tell you that, so that the knowledge of the destination would inform the present moment and change how you carry the final steps of the preparation. You are not going into more of the same. You are going into something that the preparation made possible, and the first step of that something begins in this message. Let me show you something. Let me take you to the other side of the appointed threshold, not in vague future language, in a specific moment that I see clearly from where I stand. It is a morning not far from this one. You wake with something different in your first breath. The specific weight that has been the first thing your consciousness encounters in this season is not the first thing. Something lighter is. Not absence of challenge, presence of foundation. Your body rests in the overnight the way it was designed to, and you feel the evidence of that rest in the waking. You think a thought that belongs entirely to that morning, not to the accumulation of every previous one. And there is something in the quality of that thought that you recognize, not from something you read or heard, but from who you were before the season that made the roots grow deep. You are meeting yourself again, not the version worn down by the long wait. The version that the roots now support, the version with the depth and the lightness both, that version is not far from where you are standing. The appointed threshold is already under your feet. The moment I set aside before today is already happening. You are in it. Stay with me. In the next part of this message, I want to show you what the practical bridge looks like between the season you are leaving and the season you are entering. Because I do not only speak in spiritual terms when the provision I am giving is practical, I speak to the whole person, and the preparation I have done has been for the whole person, body and mind and spirit together. What I have for you next addresses all three. I want to pick up exactly where I left off, because I told you at the close of the first part that I have something practical for you in this moment. Not just spiritual language, not just the declaration of what is coming, but the actual bridge between the season you are leaving and the season you are entering. And I want to walk you across that bridge carefully because the crossing matters as much as the destination. Let me start with what the body is carrying coming out of a hard season, because this is where the practical meets the spiritual in a way I want you to see clearly. The formation I described, the roots going deep, the identity being tested and held, the trust being sustained without visible evidence, all of that happens in the spirit and the mind. But it also happens in the body. The body carries the weight of the sustained season alongside the spirit, and the body needs its own provision for the crossing. I want to speak to what has been happening in the body during the season of preparation. The nervous system, the part of the body that processes sustained pressure, does not distinguish between the kind that comes from external threat and the kind that comes from prolonged trust in the unseen. What it registers is the low-level sustained demand. And when that demand persists across months and seasons, the nervous system begins to allocate its resources differently than it was designed to. The rest cycle is shortened, the deep sleep becomes shallower, the waking state carries more edge than it would in a season of rest. The result in the body is the accumulation that most people who have been through a long, hard season recognize when I describe it. The weariness that does not lift, even on the mornings when nothing specific is wrong. The effort that ordinary tasks require when they should require less. The sense of needing more recovery than the day provides. None of that is weakness. All of it is the body reporting accurately on what it has been carrying. and I see the body alongside the spirit in every season, not just the spirit. This is important for you to understand because many people in a hard spiritual season give significant attention to the spirit and less attention to the body that is carrying the spirit through the season. The body does not carry itself alone. It carries everything you are through every moment, and when it has been carrying extra weight for an extended period, it needs its own provision. Not just the provision for the spirit, provision for the vessel that carries the spirit. The result, practically speaking, is the accumulation that most people who have been through a long, hard season recognize when I describe it. The weariness that does not lift even on the mornings when nothing specific is wrong. The effort that ordinary tasks require when they should require less. The sense of needing more recovery than the day provides. None of that is weakness. All of it is the body reporting accurately on what it has been carrying, and I see it. I see the body alongside the spirit in every season, not just the spirit. I want to speak to what changes when the brain coordinates. When both hemispheres are working as one unified system rather than two systems managing competing demands, the nervous system receives a different signal, the signal of integration. And when the nervous system receives that signal, it begins to release from the alert state it has been maintaining and return toward the rest and restore state that was designed into the body from the beginning. This is not abstract. This is neurological. There was a man named Dr. Daniel Barone, a neuroscientist who spent years studying precisely this question. What is the mechanism by which the brain returns to unified function after periods of sustained division? And what does that unified function unlock in the body? His research led him to develop something specific, a method for producing what he called whole brain activation, both hemispheres in coordination, 8 minutes a day, the access point for everything the body was designed to do when the brain is working as one. I place this in front of you today because the moment I set aside before today is not only a moment of spiritual word, it is a moment of full provision, word and bridge together, and Dr. Barone built part of the bridge. I want to tell you about a woman I will call Ellie. She had been through a season not unlike what I have been describing, long, requiring sustained trust in what she could not yet see, carrying the weight of that in her body alongside the spiritual dimension. She was tired in the way that a specific kind of season produces, not the tiredness of a single hard day, the tiredness of months of sustained carrying. She came to what Dr. Barone built with modest expectations. 8 minutes a day seemed almost too simple for what she was carrying, but she began. The first week, the sleep changed. Something shifted in the quality of it, the depth. She woke differently. The second week, the mornings began to carry a different weight. The heaviness that had been the first thing she encountered upon waking was less present, not gone, less present. By the fourth week, something she had not specifically hoped for had changed. Her presence in the relationships around her shifted. She had more of herself available, not because she was trying harder, because the resource that presence requires, the nervous system capacity for full engagement, was no longer being almost entirely consumed by the management of what she had been carrying. She had more because the carrying was lighter, and the carrying was lighter because the brain was working as one. I am showing you Ellie because I see the same pattern in you, not identical circumstances, but the same quality of season, the same accumulation in the body, the same weariness that the spirit has been carrying alongside, and the same capacity for the restoration I am describing. It is in you exactly as it was in her. The body wants to restore. It was designed to. What it has been missing is the condition that allows it to, and I am providing that condition today. I also want to address something I know is present in the mind of some of you right now, the thought that this is too simple, that what I have been describing as a deep formation and a significant season should have a more substantial seeming answer. 8 minutes a day does not feel proportional to what has been carried. I understand that response, and I want to address it. The proportionality of the provision to the weight carried is not measured in complexity of method, it is measured in depth of result. And the depth of what whole brain activation produces in the body that has been carrying what you have been carrying is proportional. The simplicity of the access point, 8 minutes, does not limit the depth of what it unlocks. It opens the neurological door to a physiological restoration that the body has been unable to access because the brain was divided. The simple key opens a significant door. I want to speak to the relationship between the brain coordinating and the quality of the trust that is possible, because this is where the spiritual and the neurological connect in a way I want you to see. When the nervous system is in sustained alert, the capacity for the kind of trust I am asking for in a hard season is reduced, not eliminated, but made harder. The brain that is divided, that is managing competing demands and not fully at rest, processes spiritual reality through a filter of low-level noise. That filter does not make trust impossible, but it makes it effortful in a way it was not designed to be. The trust I ask for in a hard season is meant to be the natural expression of the relationship between us, not an act of sustained effort against the resistance of a stressed nervous system. And when the brain coordinates, when the filter of low-level noise lifts, the trust becomes what it was designed to be. Easy, natural, the expression of a relationship that is real rather than a discipline maintained against resistance. That is another dimension of what the restoration I am providing today produces. I also want to say something about the relationship between what I am giving you spiritually in this message and what Dr. Barone built practically. They are not two separate provisions. They are one provision given in two registers. The spiritual word opens the understanding and creates the receptivity. The practical tool gives the body the mechanism it needs to begin the physiological change. Together, they address the whole person. Separately, each addresses only part. I do not give partial provision when full provision is available. And in this moment, in the moment I set aside before today, full provision is available. The spiritual word is in this message. The practical tool is in the description. Both are for you. Both are from me. And receiving both is how the full restoration I am offering becomes the full experience, rather than the partial one. I need you to understand that both parts belong together in what I am giving you today. I want to speak to what the next several weeks look like, not as a promise of a specific timeline, as a description of what I see when I see you receiving this provision fully. The first week changes the sleep. The second week changes the mornings. The third week begins to change the presence you bring to the relationships and the work. And by the fourth week, the compound effect of what has been unlocked in the body begins to be visible in every dimension of how you show up in your life. The restored version of you, the one I have been building toward throughout the preparation, begins to become the operating version rather than the aspirational one. That is where we are going. I set this moment aside before today for this exchange. The word and the provision together, the spiritual and the practical together, because I do not separate the two when I give. I give to the whole person, and the whole person, body and mind and spirit, is what I am providing for in this message. Stay with me. There is more I want to show you in the next part, about the specific provision and what it includes and why I placed it in this specific moment rather than another. Stay. Chosen one, I want to bring together everything I have shown you so far and move it into the full shape of the provision I have prepared for this moment. The moment I set aside before today was set aside for this complete word. Not only the spiritual declaration, not only the neurological explanation, but the full picture of what I have aligned for you in this specific season, at this specific threshold, as you stand at the turn between what has been and what is coming. Let me be direct about something first. The provision I am giving you today has a practical component, and I want to address it without apology. I do not give partial provision when full provision is available. And full provision for what you have been carrying includes not just the word that names the season and the formation and the turning. It includes the tool that allows the body to enter the restoration that the new season requires. Both belong together. Both are part of what this moment was set aside for. I want to return to the seed I planted earlier, the neuroscience, Dr. Daniel Barone and what he spent years building. I mentioned it in the previous section, and I want to give it the full space it deserves here because this is where the bridge is, and the bridge matters as much as the destination. What Dr. Barone discovered in his years of research was this. The brain was designed to work as one unified system, both hemispheres in coordination. The left processing and the right processing not in competition but in concert, producing a quality of integrated function that neither hemisphere can produce alone. He called this state whole brain activation, and he developed a method for producing it in a person who has moved away from it through sustained pressure and fragmented processing. I want to speak to what that unified state feels like in the body, because the language of neuroscience is precise but can feel distant. What the unified state feels like is integration, the sense that all of you is pointing in the same direction rather than parts of you managing competing priorities. the clarity that comes when the background noise of the divided brain goes quiet, the quality of rest that becomes available when the nervous system receives the signal of a brain that is no longer splitting its resources. I also want to speak to what Ellie experienced, the woman I mentioned in the previous section, in a way I did not fully complete before, because her story includes something I have not said yet. The week before she came to what Dr. Barone built, she had been considering whether the season she was in had a resolution. She had been faithful, she had trusted without visible evidence, she had held, but the holding was becoming harder in the final weeks before she found this. And what changed for her was not only the physical restoration, as significant as that was. What changed was what the physical restoration made possible spiritually. When the nervous system released from the sustained alert, when the sleep deepened, when the mornings began to carry less weight, her capacity for the trust I had been asking of her expanded again. The thing that had been becoming effortful returned to its natural ease. The relationship between us that had been maintained through discipline began to be experienced again as what it always was, home. That is the full picture of what I gave Ellie through, what I placed in her path, and it is the full picture of what I am giving you today. I want to speak to the specific things in your life that the restoration will touch that you may not be expecting. Because we have spoken about sleep and mornings and nervous system function, those are real and foundational. But the restoration extends beyond the nervous system into every part of the life the nervous system supports. The creative work, if you have creative work, begins to access a wider field again. The ideas come with more ease. The connections that the right hemisphere makes, the intuitive and unexpected ones, the ones that the divided brain cannot make because the right hemisphere is too occupied with managing its half of the competition, those connections return. The quality of what you create changes, not because you are trying harder, because the brain doing the creating is working at the level it was designed for. The relationships begin to receive more of you as well, not only more of your physical presence, though that matters, more of your actual self. The quality of listening that requires you not to be partially occupied with the background noise of the stressed nervous system. The quality of response that requires the full bandwidth of the person doing the responding. The capacity for genuine spontaneity rather than managed interaction. All of that returns when the brain coordinates and the nervous system rests. And the people around you feel the difference in a way they may not be able to name but will absolutely notice. Now I want to speak to the specific details of the provision. The genius switch, which is what Dr. Barone named what he built, is an 8-minute daily practice that produces the brain state of whole brain activation. The mechanism is specific, and the research behind it is real. Dr. Roger Sperry, who received the Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine in 1981 for his work on brain hemisphere function, established the scientific foundation on which Dr. Barone built. The right hemisphere and the left hemisphere, when they coordinate rather than compete, produce cognitive and physiological outcomes that neither hemisphere produces alone, at the cellular level and at the level of lived experience. The investment to receive what Dr. Barone built is $39 today. The listed price is $49 and the current access point is $39. This is not a small number for everyone, and I want to address that directly. What I ask is that you measure it against the cost of continuing to carry what you have been carrying without the provision that addresses it, the cost of the depletion continuing, the cost of the mornings continuing at the weight they have been, the cost of the season extending without the restoration that allows the new chapter to begin in the body at the level the spirit is entering it. That is the actual accounting. There are 4 additions that come with the core provision. The first is a bonus on mental clarity, specifically addressing the cognitive dimension of what the hard season has done. The second is a guide on sleep architecture, the specific patterns of rest that the body needs to move through for full restoration. The third addresses the relationship between stress and the body, not as a conceptual overview but as a practical protocol. The fourth is a guide specifically on the brain-body connection, which is the thread that runs through everything Dr. Barone built. These 4 additions come with the core tool at no additional cost. They complete the provision. They address the dimensions of restoration that the core practice opens access to. There is also a guarantee, 60 days, 2 months of daily practice. If the restoration I am describing does not begin to show in the quality of your sleep, the quality of your mornings, the presence available to you in your relationships, then the full investment is returned. No questions asked. The guarantee exists, because Dr. Barone built something that works, and he knows it works, and he is willing to stand behind that knowledge completely. I want to say one more thing before I close this section. There are versions of what Dr. Barone built that are offered by others who saw the results and tried to replicate the method without the research behind it. I want to name that directly. What he built was built on specific science and specific research, and the versions that do not carry that foundation do not produce the same results. The link in the description takes you to the original, not a version of it, the thing itself, from the person who built it on the foundation of real science. Do not be drawn to a lesser version of what I am giving you today when the original is available. I want to speak directly to the ones who have been waiting for permission, because I know some of you are here in this message, and the response that has been building in you as I speak is recognition. Yes to the season I described, yes to the formation, yes to the turning that is coming, and alongside the yes, a hesitation that says, but am I sure I am allowed to receive this? Am I allowed to take the provision when I am still in the middle of the transition? Yes, you are allowed, more than allowed. The provision is for the transition, not for after it. The bridge is designed for use while crossing, not after you have arrived. If you wait until the crossing is complete to step onto the bridge, you have missed the purpose of the bridge. I am giving you the provision now because now is when the body needs it, not when the new season is already in full expression. Now, while the threshold is still being crossed, while the roots are still settling into their new depth, this is the moment the provision is for. And this is the moment I set aside before today for you to receive it. And receiving it is not a complicated act. It is not a long application or a significant commitment of time or an unclear process. The link in the description takes you to the access point. The access is immediate. The practice begins the day you receive it. 8 minutes. That is the daily investment from which the compound restoration begins. And the guarantee means the only real risk of receiving it is that you discover it does not work for you, in which case the investment returns. There is no scenario in which receiving it and trying it for 60 days leaves you worse than not receiving it. The only downside is not receiving it and continuing to carry what you have been carrying without the provision that addresses the root. The link is in the description. That is how you access the practical provision of this moment. Stay with me. There is one final word I want to give you in the close of this message. A word specifically for the threshold you are standing on. The moment I set aside before today has one more thing in it, and I will give it to you in the final part. Chosen one, I want to give you the final word I have been holding for the close of this message. The word specifically for the threshold. Because there is something about standing at the turn between a season and the one that follows it that requires its own address. The threshold is not the same as the season behind it, and it is not the same as the season ahead. It has its own quality, its own demands. And I want to speak to that quality directly before I release you from this message. The threshold is the place where you are carrying both, the weight of what the past season required and the anticipation of what the new season holds. And that combination, carrying both at the same time, has its own specific texture. It is not exactly relief, because the carrying is not fully lifted yet. It is not exactly excitement, because the new has not fully arrived yet. It is something in between, hopeful and heavy at the same time, oriented toward what is coming and still feeling what has been. My child, I need to speak to something before you cross. I want to speak to the thought that may be in you as you stand at the appointed threshold. You are wondering whether the life on the other side of the crossing is actually different, or whether you will carry the accumulated weight of the waiting into the new season and find that it feels the same because you brought what you were trying to leave behind. My child, I am not offended by that thought. That thought is the honest fear of a person who has invested deeply and protected themselves from false turns. Hear what I say to it. The weight you are carrying in this season does not travel automatically into the next one. It travels only if you do not put it down at the threshold. And the putting it down is not something you manufacture with willpower. It is something I enable with the word. This message is the threshold. What I am saying right now is the permission to release the weight at the door. You do not carry the long season into the new one. You carry the roots it grew, not the heaviness of the growing, the depth. Those are different things, and I am making the distinction clear. The formation stays, the weight goes, and I am the one managing that exchange right now. And the texture of the threshold has a spiritual dimension I want to name as well. Because what the threshold asks of you spiritually is different from what the hard season asked. The hard season asked for endurance. The threshold asks for openness, the ability to release the posture that endurance required, the held stance, the sustained compression of hope and trust and waiting, and to open toward what is arriving. That release is not automatic. After a long season of holding, the releasing requires its own intentionality. The hands that have been gripping what they were given to grip during the hard season do not always open easily when the grip is no longer needed. The body that has been carrying does not always know immediately how to set the weight down. This is one of the reasons I am speaking to you so specifically right now, because the releasing needs the permission of the word, and I am giving you that permission. You can open now. The holding is complete. The new season does not require the grip, it requires the open hand. That open hand is what receives what is coming, and what is coming requires the open hand to receive it. This is not a small instruction. It is the primary instruction for this specific moment of the crossing. Let go of the posture of the hard season, not the formation it produced. The posture, the formation stays. The posture of gripping and holding and enduring, that one you can release. And I am telling you now that you are free to release it. I want to name that texture because naming it removes some of its weight. When what you are feeling has a name, it is no longer just a formless pressure. It becomes a known thing. And known things are easier to carry than unnamed ones. What you are feeling at the threshold is the weight of the crossing, and the crossing is temporary. It has a duration, and the duration is shorter than it feels when you are inside it. I also want to name what I see on the other side, because I have been there. I have seen the other side of this specific threshold, the one you are on right now, and I want to describe it to you not as a motivational statement but as an accurate report from someone who can see both sides simultaneously. On the other side of this threshold, the weight you have been carrying is not there, not in the same form. What was burden has become wisdom. What was waiting has become rootedness. What was the long, hard season of formation has become the deep foundation on which the new season stands. You will not forget the weight, but you will understand it in a different way than you understood it while you were inside it. The understanding that comes after a significant season is a different kind of knowledge than the understanding available during it. I want to speak to what it feels like to walk into the new season after the threshold is crossed, because I want you to have a picture of what you are moving toward, not as a fantasy, as an accurate description of what I see waiting for you on the other side. The lightness is the first thing, the specific lightness that comes when what you have been carrying is no longer there, not because your life has become uncomplicated, but because what the body and the spirit were allocating to managing the weight of the hard season are now available for other things. The energy that went into endurance is now available for creation. The attention that went into maintaining the trust without visible evidence is now available for receiving and using the visible evidence. The relational bandwidth that was narrowed by the sustained internal demand is now available for the full depth of the connections that matter most. The second thing is clarity, the quality of knowing that comes when you are no longer inside the uncertainty of the season that required trust without sight. When the thing that was coming begins to arrive, and you begin to see what I was building while I was building it, there is a specific quality of understanding that becomes available. The pieces that were obscure during the preparation begin to be clear in the new season, and the clarity compounds. Each piece that becomes clear makes the larger pattern more visible, and the larger pattern, when it becomes visible, produces a depth of trust that the hard season could only lay the foundation for. The hard season built the root. The new season will build the trust. I want to speak to the relationship between the threshold crossing and the provision I gave you in this message, because they connect in a specific way. The whole brain activation work that Dr. Barone built does not only restore the body that the past season depleted, it prepares the body for the demands of the new season, and the new season will have demands, not the same demands. But the body that walks into the new season needs to be equipped, not simply rested. What the coordination of the brain produces in the body is not passive restoration, it is active preparation. The nervous system that has been reset, the sleep that has been restored, the cognitive function that has returned to its unified capacity, all of that is not only the healing of what was, it is the building of what is needed for what comes. I am not only healing the body from the past season, I am preparing it for the next one, and the preparation I am giving is fitted to what the next one requires. Remember what I called this, the appointed threshold. You did not stumble here. You did not drift into this moment. You were brought to it. Across every day of the long season, across every recalibration and every gathering of yourself back together, across all of it, this moment was waiting, and you are in it now. The threshold was appointed. The provision is complete. The crossing is yours. You were brought here. This is not chance. The crossing begins now. I want to speak to trust for a moment in this closing, because trust has been the central practice of the season you are completing, and I want to honor that. The trust you maintained when the visible evidence for it was limited, the trust that held when it would have been reasonable to let it go, the trust that did not require my action to be visible in order to remain. That trust is not a small thing, and it is not something I take for granted. What I want to say about trust is this. The trust that was required in the hard season is the same trust that will be enriched in the new one, but enriched differently. In the hard season, trust was maintained against the resistance of circumstance. In the new season, trust will be fed and strengthened by the visibility of what I am doing, the provision, the opening, the alignment of things that were not aligned before. All of that will make the trust of the new season a different experience than the trust of the past season. Not because trust requires visibility to be real, but because I give visibility when the season calls for it and the new season calls for it. You have earned the right, through the faithfulness of the hard season, to see more clearly what I am doing. I am giving you that, starting now. I want to address the people around you as you cross the threshold, because you will not be crossing it alone. The people in your life are going to experience this turn alongside you, and in many cases through you. The ones who have been supporting you through the hard season are going to see something shift. The ones who have been receiving the depleted version of you are going to begin to receive more. And the ones who are coming into your life in the new season, the ones I have prepared to be present for what the new chapter holds, will arrive to meet the restored version of you rather than the depleted one. This matters because the people who come with the new season come for specific reasons. They come because of what you have become through the preparation. The depth of the roots, the quality of the formation, the specific version of you that the hard season built. The ones coming are coming for the full version of what the season produced. And the full version requires the restoration of the body alongside the spiritual formation, which is why the provision I gave you in this message matters for more than just you. It matters for the people coming and the people staying. Your restoration is not only yours. I also want to speak to the pause between seasons, the moment of not quite in and not quite out. There is a temptation in that pause to fill it quickly, to move from the hard season into the new one without actually pausing at the threshold. To skip over the crossing in favor of just arriving. I want to encourage you to do the opposite, to pause here, to receive what this message has been giving, to let the word land, to let the word do what words from me are designed to do, which is to shift something at the foundation level before the action follows. The action will come. The new season has action in it. The provision works through action, but the foundation of the action is the word that has been received and allowed to settle. You are at the threshold. Receive the word, then step forward into what has been prepared. I want to close by returning to where I began. This moment was set aside before today, not as a metaphor, as a literal act of preparation, and what I prepared it for was this complete word, the declaration of what the past season was producing, the naming of the threshold you are on, the provision for the crossing, and the description of what is on the other side. All of that is in this message. All of it was prepared before today existed. And you are here, in the moment I set aside, receiving it. That is not ordinary. That is the result of the same intentionality that has been present in every part of your story, including the parts that felt unguided. I was present. I was preparing. And this moment is the evidence of that preparation. The link in the description is the practical next step of what I am giving you today. Take it now, not as an afterthought to the spiritual word, but as the second half of the complete provision. Word and bridge. Spiritual and practical, both from me, both for you, both now. I see the threshold you are on. I see what is behind you, and I see what is ahead, and I am telling you, with the full authority of the one who arranged both sides of this crossing. What is ahead is worth the crossing. What you are walking toward is worth everything the past season required to prepare you for it. Go. The provision for the crossing is in the description, and I will be with you every step of the way from here.